Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. As always, it's a pleasure for us to have an opportunity to sit down with Governor Gary Herbert, who has his roots in county government, and take a half hour to talk about the state as he sees it in relationship to counties. Governor, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Well, it's great to be with you again, Chad, and I echo what you say. I think county work, county elected official work, is some of the most important and some of the best elected official job in the state.
Excellent. Well, we are often running in a legislative session. I'm sure it's the busiest time of year for you, trying to, herd cats, I suppose.
Well, the legislative leadership has to herd the cats. I have to kind of stay out of their way and make sure that we collaborate together. It's the most important 45 days of the year. This is really when the people's work gets done in this 45 days. So it's a very significantly important time for many reasons. Number one at the top of the list is the budget. We actually take the taxpayers' dollars and decide how to spend it and where to spend it, and hopefully reflect the priorities of the people. I think we do a pretty good job actually of that here in Utah, and I'm proud that we do it in such a way that we are one of only 9 states in America today that have a AAA bond rating.
I do want to ask a question, though, because one of the big initiatives last year was the reinvestment in justice, and that bill, I think, got a lot of support from your office. It's now been in play for about, 6 months or so, and some of the sheriffs, particularly the rural ones, are a little bit concerned about it and its funding. What kind of feedback have you gotten on that?
Criminal justice reform is something that I think everybody understands is an appropriate thing to do. If we can improve the criminal justice system, that's what you want to do. Our criminal justice reform has been in place since October 1st, so it's only been less than 3 months. So it's a little early to say whether the good or the bad or how the impact is going to have. It was designed to work with people who are nonviolent offenders. Think in terms of those who have substance abuse problems, drug problems, mental health issues. We do with the counties, for example, we have mental health courts and drug courts to help us sift through these people and not just warehouse them, but actually help rehabilitate them. So that's the intention. And I think we've had help from national organizations like the Pew Center to help us evaluate that, our own people here. And, it's probably going to be a work in progress to see how it works, the good, and if there needs to be a change made. So we'll review that periodically to see if it works appropriately. But the intention, again, is to find that appropriate balance of safety, which is the #1 goal, protect the public. We're only talking about nonviolent offenders, and to see if we can, in fact, do a better job of rehabilitation. And I think that's an appropriate goal. It's, the court system and law enforcement are not perfect, and so mistakes do happen. I think it's too early to say if there's any mistake because of this new law that's been in place for less than 3 months.
I think probably one of the biggest concerns about it is that it's typical in a legislative session. It's easy to start scrimping on the funding, and I think that's the concern most of the sheriffs and the attorneys have out, particularly in the rural counties. Is it's great in concept, but make sure that the money flow stays there.
And I say 3 months, it's really 4 months. Again, whatever we do, whether we're building roads, whether we're providing for mental health, we need to make sure we adequately fund the programs. And this is no different. If we're going to have rehabilitation programs, we need to fund them appropriately. And not just on the Wasatch Front, but certainly in the rural parts of Utah too. So again, most things that come out are not perfect when they first roll them out. It's a learning process and an evolution, and we find where it works, where it needs to be maybe strengthened, modified, changed. And I expect that will happen in this instance too. But the idea of criminal justice reform is a good one. And we ought to see what we can do to respect the taxpayers' dollars and get the better return on the investment that the taxpayers are making.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here on the county seat. We're having our annual discussion with Governor Herbert as he sees the state from county level on up to his office. And we will continue with the county seat right after this commercial break.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
In a place that is beyond words, there is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
I'm a Utah's own dairy producer. I care about the health of my animals, and I care about the quality of food we produce.
Because when it comes to providing quality dairy products, I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
And the jobs we enjoy are vital, because Utah's Own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's Own products, because Utah's Own is good for me, and it's good for Utah.
Keeping it here at home, Utah's Own.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're having our conversation with Governor Gary Herbert. Last year, there's a lot of chatter in the legislative session about transportation, and I think we probably got a lot of that stuff solved. What do you see as the topic that's going to generate a lot of conversation this time? There's always like that little buzz that goes on.
Well, who knows what will bubble up? There's a lot of protected bills that we don't know about and haven't seen. So we don't know. We know that, in fact, there's a record number of bills that have been filed, about 1,200 already. Last year we passed about 510, 512, somewhere around there. So it's yet to be determined in our first week here in the legislative session. Transportation, I think, has been at least put to bed for a while. We've 18 years since our last adjustment on the gasoline tax, and it's past due. I mean, we've lost purchasing power. Even with the adjustments made, we've not caught up to where we were able to adjust for inflation, let alone the fact that we have more efficient automobiles. And what was happening with that was that more and more of the general taxpayers' dollars were being spent into roads as opposed to the appropriate balance of user fee. Gasoline tax is a user fee, and there's got to be that appropriate balance that should be taking place, and we're way out of whack. So the adjustment made last year, I think, helps us for the next decade, probably put us on solid footing going forward. So I think there's not going to be much done there. We're going to be able to maintain and build capacity as we need to over this next decade. Air quality is probably an issue that's going to be a topic of discussion. We've done a pretty good job on that. It's sometimes not as well known that we've reduced pollution along the Wasatch Front here, for example, 35%. And yet we have 350,000 more people here. So that's a challenge. More people, more congestion, more pollution, and yet we've been able to reduce it by 35%. Still have the challenge of the inversion. Can't use that as an excuse. We just have to deal with it. So I think you'll see some areas of improvement there, maybe with better fuel vehicles, buses, things of that nature. We're working with our refineries to bring in Tier 3 fuels. That'll be a major change for air quality if we can get Tier 3 fuels in.
Now, you've managed to get that on, rather than a required legislative mandate, you've managed to kind of voluntarily get them to step up.
Yeah, Tesoro.
How did you do that?
Well, you go ask. And, I've told them, if you're the only one that has Tier 3 fuels, because it doesn't cost that much more. There's hardly any difference, maybe 3 or 4 cents a gallon. People are going to say, yeah, I want to burn cleaner fuels. I want to be a good, responsible steward of the earth, clean air, clean water, things that I want. So people, I think, will gravitate to their stations. I think they'll have an increased marketing opportunity here by doing that. I think it will cause other refineries to try to follow suit, and that's good for the public. So they just are good corporate citizens and said, hey, we'll step up and do it earlier than as mandated by federal law, and that's good news for us here in Utah.
Do you think it'll drag the other refineries along?
Well, hopefully not drag, but maybe push, maybe incent them to, and they don't want to lose market share, and so they want to be able to compete. It's building a better mousetrap. Tesoro will be building a better product. and it will be available to us, the consumer, and we're smart people, and we'll start buying it.
When do you think that'll be online? Did they give you any indication?
Maybe the next year, next 12 months to 18 months.
I'd like, from your position as the chief executive of the state, to kind of back up a little bit, and let's look at the urban Wasatch Front, because it's where most of our population is, and look at the vast array of problems that you have to anticipate. If you could become the state's alchemist and come up with a magic potion to solve the one biggest problem that the urban part of the state has, what would that potion be?
Well, the urban part has a different set of problems than the rural part. Urbanization that's taking place along the Wasatch Front, we have, you know, nearly 80% now, certainly above 75% of all the state's population between Provo and Ogden, 4 counties. That's a high density population, probably about the 7th most densely populated corridor in the nation. And if you figure in, you know, some of our other major metropolitan areas, like up in Cache Valley, down in Iron County and Washington County, take in the Uinta Basin, maybe down at Grand County, pretty well you've got 95% of all the state population. And unfortunately for the rural parts of Utah, where the population is growing, it tends to be where the economic opportunity are. So we've got to deal with congestion and growth pressures that impact significantly. Pollution is one of them, impact on roads, another, continually having to grow the economy. But the other side of the coin is, for those in rural Utah, we have our young people who are saying, I don't have a job. I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get a college education, but will there be a job back in Garfield County for me to come back to? And that's a unique challenge. So if I could wave the magic wand, the Wasatch Front needs to be able to take care of and accommodate the growth. And in the rural parts of Utah, we need to create more economic opportunity so the people, and particularly our children and our grandchildren, can stay home. They don't have to leave. They can find a job in the hometown where they were raised.
So actually that magic wand is solving the problem both urban and rural all at once, if you can kind of rebalance that employment picture.
And the market is what the market does. We can't just say, well, we want you to go there, business. They'll say, I'll go where I want to go, where I think I can be profitable. So we've got to find ways to allow people to understand rural Utah can be a very great place to set up a business and be profitable. And with the internet now, with technology being what it is, not having to be in a port or a major city to be successful allows us to have more opportunity, I think, in rural Utah. That's a good thing. It's a good thing because we can have growth more in the rural parts, take away some of the pressures in the urban parts, and have solid economics and economic development, job creation in all 29 counties and in all 245 cities.
So in doing that, infrastructure is going to become very important. Do you see that as a state role to help push rural infrastructure so that they've got the cable, they've got the fiber optics, they've got the things necessary to make that run?
If we cannot incent the private sector to do it, I mean, obviously I would just assume the private sector do everything if it could. It's not capable of doing it, just like the government is not capable of doing everything. It's a partnership. There are certain roles. I believe in a limited size of government that's efficient and effective, and that's what we've created here in Utah. The most effective, efficient government probably in America today is Utah state government. But infrastructure, you know, the building of roads, for example, we see that, the access to water, to broadband, technology, those infrastructure needs are things where the government can step in and help. It's good for the entire state. It's not just a local issue. If we have a good, healthy economy in Garfield County, in southern Utah, and rural Utah, it's good for the Wasatch Front. So there is a state purpose for infrastructure, and that empowers the private sector to do what they need to do and find opportunity to, in fact, excel and create wealth and create jobs.
Excellent. We're going to take a quick break here on the county seat. We'll come back with our conversation with Governor Gary Herbert. We'll be right back.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake Adventure? Snowmobile action? Pristine skiing? Spectacular solitude? Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah. Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah. Mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're having our conversation with Governor Herbert. I want to turn attention, while we're on infrastructure for the rural part of the state, and really talk about what drives good business activity, and that's energy.
Yes.
And most of our energy grid is still powered by coal. Secretary Jewell just in the last few weeks has put a moratorium on any new coal development, and apparently will have an impact in Utah quicker than people suspect. What's your plan of action from your office? What are your thoughts about this?
Well, it's disappointing. President Obama came into office talking about his support for clean coal and clean coal technology, and coal extraction, transportation, and burning as a fuel has gotten cleaner since he came into office. It's better. But maybe he didn't mean it. I don't know. And there appears, you know, you've heard the phrase war on coal. It appears that that's the case. There is a war on coal. And you're right, we have a great energy base here in Utah. One of the reasons we've been named by Forbes as the best place in America for business is because we have lower than the national average cost of energy, which fuels, no pun intended, economic growth and development and quality of life. About 80% of our energy is developed by coal. They're transitioning now from coal to natural gas a lot. It's still a carbon-based fuel, but with the clean fuel regulations put in place, this new moratorium, it appears they don't want to have coal at all. The sad thing is the science doesn't help them on that argument, because the science tells us that the base load for our energy over the next generation, with the available technology we have, is going to come from carbon-based fuels, either coal, natural gas, and or nuclear power. It can't come from some of the renewables. There's not enough of it, it's not efficient enough, and it's too expensive. Now technology will bring that into the line, and let's let the marketplace do what the marketplace does better by determining, is there a better mousetrap to be built? But it appears that clearly with the Clean Fuels Act, for example, if you wanted to build a new coal-fired power plant, you've got to have technology that's not even been invented. That means we don't want to have any more coal-fired power plants. That's what the administration is saying. I think that's not good for the country, by the way, and I think it's bad policy. I think let's let the marketplace do what the marketplace does. Clearly the people want sustainable energy, they want it affordable, and they do want it cleaner. And that's actually happening. And I'm a little concerned about this intrusion that impacts not only Utah and 4 or 5 of our counties, but Wyoming, West Virginia, you know, Tennessee. I mean, there's a lot of places that rely on coal in the country, and the world relies on coal, and we're making it difficult to compete now.
Is that something that you see the western states, you know, because Wyoming's kind of in the same boat, getting together and challenging?
Absolutely. There's litigation going on right now on the clean fuels aspect of it, this new act. And the moratorium, which has kind of caught everybody from coming from left field, I think is a disappointment. But Matt Mead, my friend, the governor of Wyoming, they rely so much on coal as part of their economy up there. It's really going to hurt them. We are going to transition. We've diversified our energy, so I think we're going to be okay. That doesn't mean it's good policy, though. And again, I'm a free market guy, and I think we are evolving in cleaner fuels, and technology will help us find better ways to do things. But we have a lot of coal that can be used appropriately as good stewards of the earth, and we have technology that allows that to happen. So we ought to embrace that and see if we can, in fact, continue to have low-cost energy that's sustainable and cleaner.
Got a couple of minutes. So let's turn our attention to the southeast corner of the state. Our last county seat episode dealt with the monument, or the potential of a monument down there. The Native Americans, the native tribes to Utah that live in the Bears Ears area do not want a monument. They're supporting the Public Lands Initiative. The tribes around in the surrounding states want it. You know, where does the state fall on that if this becomes a big issue?
Well, I guess it's human nature to say if we have something that's detrimental and I can have it in your backyard, it's better than having it in my backyard. So maybe that's part of this. We have not heard about the Bears Ears. You know, I'm a county commissioner and go back to the 90s on this public land issue. I haven't heard about this until a couple of years ago. So this is kind of a new issue, a new demand. Under the Public Land Initiative, the Bears Ears is addressed, I think, very appropriately. What they've wanted, or what this coalition of Native Americans has wanted 1.8 million acres. The county commissioners and the people in the local areas wanted to have 800,000 acres. And the compromise that's been put into the Public Land Initiative is 1.2 million acres, with some flexibility to help them with ceremonial needs, and I think it's a great compromise. So if we can support the Public Land Initiative, I think the Native Americans get what they want and desire, and it doesn't jeopardize all the other 17 million acres that we're trying to accommodate and find the appropriate balance. It's 4-to-1 in favor of conservation. So the thing that we fear would be the president stepping into this with a national monument and kibosh the whole thing. That would not be good for the Indians, wouldn't be good for Utah. It would just be detrimental to really conservation efforts, which ought to be applauded in this bill for 18 million acres of Utah.
Well, we've got to take a break, and we'll be right back with more of the county seat with Governor Gary Herbert. We'll be right back.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Color. It's something that can be seen. But have you ever wanted to reach out and touch it? Experience it. In San Juan County, Utah, color comes to life like nowhere else on earth. Color can be more than an abstract. Color can be your gateway to a new world. Visit San Juan County and explore the past, present, and future in a way that you've only dreamed of. San Juan County. Color your experience.
Beautiful scene, isn't it? The great wide spaces of the wild, wild west. Hi, I'm Chad Booth, host of At Your Leisure. I'm asking you to support the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Their efforts responsibly preserve access to our public lands. If it were not for the Blue Ribbon Coalition and their efforts, you may not have access to millions of acres of land across the West. This is America's playground, and if we don't do anything, we are going to lose it. Join, participate, and donate. Welcome back to the county seat, our last few minutes with Governor Herbert. You know, there have been so many challenges with conflicts between federal land management and local management, local desires, but one of them that continues to not kind of be resolved, but kind of off the front burner right now, is wild horse and burro. Are we any closer to finding a solution? I know that if you talk to Greg Sheehan, he'd say, let us manage them like wildlife in Utah, and we could solve the problem. Where do you see this going?
Well, the overall concept of the federal overreach into the state domain is a frustration. And it's not just a Republican frustration. Democrats are frustrated because of the overreach into our backyards, too. And we see that played out here, whether it's national monument designation, wilderness, how do we control our water, access to the Taylor Grazing Act. I mean, all those things that impact our public lands. And it's not a bad thing, or not a good thing, it's just it is, and we have to deal with it. Congress injects themselves into wild horse and burros. Now, other than endangered species, they have no say on any other animal. Why wild horses and burros? Somebody came along and said, we need to protect these wild horses and burros, and so let's create federal legislation. So it's a federal issue that needs to be, a law that needs to be changed. I've talked with Neil Cornsey, the BLM, and we've both said this should be given back to the states to manage. And, you know, we would manage them appropriately, and right now they're not being managed appropriately by the federal government, just like we think they're mismanaged the public land. They're mismanaging the wild horse and burros. So give it back to the states. We'll find a way to, in fact, have good conservation efforts to keep them alive, but also maybe thin the herds and put them in the appropriate places, and we'll manage them as good stewards should do. That's not what the federal government's doing with them right now, and it's sad for the wild horses and burros.
So, do you still have some enthusiasm? These problems all get back to land conflicts with management, and at one point your office had some enthusiasm about the transfer of public lands. Do you still have any optimism about that?
It's not just the transfer. We ought to emphasize the outcomes. It's better management. We are a public land state. We will always be a public land state. The enemies try to say you're going to privatize, you're going to sell off. That's not the intent of any legislation we have here. It's a matter of getting the optimal benefit out of the public lands. Tourism and travel, farming and ranching, natural resource development, energy. Tourism, travel is a big part of our economy, and we want to protect that. Our national parks, our 45 state parks. I mean, it all should work together in harmony. So all we're saying is the state ought to have more say in the management of our backyard. And that can be through the Public Land Initiative. It can be in turning more of the responsibility back to the states, maybe a combination of all the above. And it should be a partnership that is done in harmony with the idea of what can we do to optimally manage the public lands.
Excellent. Governor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate having you on the county seat.
Always great to be here.
Welcome anytime. Just give us a call if you want to talk to us.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll thank you for joining us, inviting us into your home. We'll look for you next week on the county seat. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on the county seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of the county seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4 Good for Utah.